So today we'll be going over crime scene awareness and tactical paramedic awareness. Technically, the chapter per Sanders is only crime scene awareness. However, we will be going over some tactical paramedic things as well. Tend to go kind of one and the same a bit, and kind of go over some of that. So approaching the scene, particularly ones that we know will tend to be violent, not only for paramedics but for other responders. One of the biggest things is scene safety for us, something I've harped on since the beginning, and it's really big. We want to go home and get home safe. In the tactical environment, safety is paramount first, whether that's making sure that we're holding security, putting rounds on range before we start medicine. Medicine is super important, but we need to make sure our scene safety is first. So if we're just paramedic on a scene, even when we're holding short anywhere and we are just trying to wait for law enforcement to clear a scene, simple things like not sleeping while we're holding short because, or in a SWAT standby, because many times criminals or other people will either be running or walking around that area, and if we're not paying attention, they very much still see us as responders, whether law enforcement or not, and even if we would be saving them here shortly, they see us as a target and a decent chance for us to become injured or worse with this. So keep your head on a swivel and try and always make sure that you are staying aware and being safe on any of these scenes and anything that can potentially be unsafe. Second, that tingly feeling in the back of your neck, start paying more attention to things around you. As soon as you start seeing some of those, whether it's a certain part of town, a location that has interesting dispatch notes, or it could be anything kind of in that nature, something that really goes there. Some of the previous calls give us a lot about a scene, and sometimes you hear dispatch take note of that, and like, hey, this is code, we're holding short till they clear just due to previous is on there. Maybe it's a call you've ran in that area. You see this a little bit more in the smaller areas where, or if you're in an area where you, for those who have a station or area where they post at a lot normally, say the units that are stationed up in Northtown or Cass, where you do know certain houses and or locations to be a little bit more um, unsafe, or we've had bad experiences in the past. Keep your head on swivel during these. Obviously, if dispatch knows, they should be trying their best to make sure that we are aware of that. Many times, police is. However, we know sometimes we're not always. Dispatch doesn't always know if something's safe or not. And many times, how would they? They aren't always the ones on the street. If they get anything that says that makes them think the scene is unsafe, they should let us know. But in the case that we're not, we need to be on top of our game, start noticing things, being aware of them. As you get on start safe scenes, you start looking at big, large crowds, ton of people under influence of alcohol or other drugs. Obviously, that's like a good portion of Vegas at any one time. But if there's if there's a big scene going on, something there, or even just partying, it doesn't take much to cause the scene to turn. And if it's not in this PowerPoint, it's probably one I gave you guys a long time ago. But I was at Chico State up in Northern California when I was in the Marines. We were just me and my buddy were up there hanging out. All of a sudden, it was Chico State's a very party-heavy school, and they were in the college residential areas. We're just hanging out. Everyone's getting obviously alcohol's involved for most people around, and then the police kick out a bunch of people from one house party. All of them leave in a inebriated state, along with being a little bit aggravated that the house party just got kicked out and just started causing issues on the street. It shortly there turned after they started just mobbing down or like making a big scene outside because it's around all the frats and sorority houses, things like that. People were leaving other houses and joining in on it. And next thing I know, me and my buddy were kind of just walking down the street where we watched everyone get kicked out of that party. Then about 5 minutes, we next saw more people. It just started flooding the area, and within probably 10 to 15, all of a sudden we saw like cops in riot gear trying to disperse the crowd. Obviously, this is something that I think happens semi regularly enough that they had gear and riot gear ready to get into and set this up, and it just got weirdly violent nothing crazy happened, but all of a sudden there's horses, riot gear, and then people were throwing things at the cops. And this was just a college house party, so it can be as simple as that from a college area where there's just a bunch of inebriation. We obviously know the strip can cause all types of drunkenness and craziness throughout the year. And then anywhere we go, if once people have alcohol or other drugs on board, we're now thinking, hey, maybe they aren't making the best judgment calls. So we need to be aware of their ability to make good decisions, and sometimes those decisions lead towards violence. So we got to be there. Anytime you hear of on-scene violence, particularly domestic disputes, if anyone who has not heard the previous statement, or the upcoming statement, that domestic violences are some of the most scary calls that cops go on and the most unpredictable. They don't know. Maybe it is just a wife and husband arguing, a boyfriend, girlfriend, or whatever, arguing, or but many times that can lead to emotions way higher than they need to, and it can just lead to any large array of issues that can happen and quickly cause people to act irrationally and violently, way worse than you would think they would. So domestic violences are something that we always got to be cautious of, and we should have at least be awareness of. Another one can kind of think of, if you've ever been on a pediatric arrest of some type, emotions are running very, very high. It's one of a few reasons why Metro is called, but that can be one. And if family starts getting out of control, not allowing us to work and treat the kiddo, that is one of those ones where sometimes it's good. I know we harp on it all the time not to leave the scene of a pediatric arrest, because moving them causes the kiddo to be we had worst outcomes. However, so does getting assaulted by the family members for not doing what they think is enough. And kind of understandably so. I've had a few of these where the family just gets very aggravated, and it's because their kid's dying in front of them. I can understand completely, but that also causes them to act a bit irrationally, and that's something we have to be very aware of. Irrational people are not predictable, and predictability is a big way that we can help try and mitigate these. But we got to be on top of our game in the first place and start noticing that. And if they're acting irrational, now we're not able to mitigate those. Anytime you see weapons, be cautious of that. Obviously, anything can be a weapon. If you guys remember back to my situational awareness one, things even such as literally anything can be an improvised weapon at some point. But if you see things like guns or patients with knives, be really aware and try and be on top of things, because we don't have the equipment to try and defend ourselves against that. Even if you wear some body armor, we don't wear a full helmet, and getting shot in the face still kills you just as quickly. So be aware, be safe. That's a large part of this. Another big one. When you're approaching the scene, yeah, like you should be, as you're going, particularly, we've all been to those areas where we know that it's not always the best neighborhood, extra, and we go out there and our head should already start being on a swivel. We should be looking out, being ready to do what needs to be done to try and keep ourselves safe, looking at any type of indicators that the area that we are in is unsafe, and that and if there's any danger that we need to be aware of. So no harp on the spit, but just be safe, eyes out, and start looking ahead. Um, if all of a sudden the scene starts getting shady, make sure you leave yourself an exit, even if it's, which is another bad thing about the Exeter areas, there's one entrance and exit, so it's not that hard of a concept that they could rather easily ambush someone, have a first responder respond in there or whatever else, and then just move to the exit out of there. And it's kind of a big issue. So, but that also goes into your house. Don't let the patient get between you and an exit. If they start getting between you and the exit you came in, be ready to find another exit, whether that be a window. It becomes really an issue when you're up at real high rise type places, because now you're dealing with a window is no longer an acceptable way we can leave the building. So that is something we need to be aware of and be on top of. So we can, when you walk into a room, they start getting violent, we need to get out. Throw whatever you have at the patient. Don't try and carry out a monitor and bag, all that. If they're coming at you, chuck that monitor right at their face and run. That's Who cares? You'll get it back and if they shoot it, do something other things to the monitor, that's fine. It's not yours. It's a whole lot harder to replace a person than it is a cardiac monitor, and it just don't worry. Get safe. Use things to get out of the situation, but don't stay on a scene if it's in danger. We do not get paid to fight. We don't have the gear to fight. We're not. That's not where we're at. So keep your keep safe. Don't let people get in between you and the exit. Many times weapons are present. If like, don't freak out just because you see a weapon. That's not the big deal that we're really talking about here. Obviously, it's a concern if someone has a weapon of if you see a weapon of any type on scene. That doesn't mean that you see a knife on the kitchen table and you freak out. You could even see a gun on a counter somewhere. Depending where you respond, that might be a regular occurrence. You go respond to a very redneck type area and they have guns everywhere. Just because you see one doesn't mean to freak out. We like just make sure the patient's not moving to it. If the patient has a weapon on them and they're not a police officer or something similar, go ahead and just remove yourself from the situation till Metro can come or whoever else can come to try and help you out, guys. Like weapons, even if you are wearing body armor, I doubt you're wearing plates. And if it's even if it's a pistol, which a level 3 body armor can stop, usually unless they have rounds meant to defeat that, and then good luck. We are not meant to deal with that. That is not our job. So just see a weapon and it starts seeming a little bit shady. It's fine. Get people there that actually do that job. So carrying on, many calls, like I said kind of earlier, that are pay routine require scene size up begins before you get there, and anytime you're in a place unfamiliar, you are at a disadvantage. When you walk into a house, they know where things are at, and you do not. If they start acting a little bit weird, talk about some of the things in the past, they start having that clenched hand. They're being, if they're any type of alternate, it doesn't just have to be ETOH and or drugs. Being hypoxic makes you altered and making irrational decisions. So does being hypovolemic, hypoglycemic, um, having your ammonias out of whack, like electrolytes all out of it. There's many things that can cause people to not be thinking rationally, and it's not always ETOH drugs. Um, or them just being crazy. Although if we do suspect that, then we need to have a higher kind of alertness to what we're seeing around us. Yeah, kind of went over all this. If you hear screams, items breaking, gunshots, yeah, just back on out of there. Go ahead and call Metro. Don't get ourselves there. Chemicals or presence of empty chemical containers, whether we're talking about a possible hazmat issue or like a meth lab, be aware. Dogs, many times. I mean, we have some exotic snakes and reptiles and tigers and things here. Other things. So breeds of dogs that are trained to be vicious, like Chihuahuas, horrible. Don't want to deal with those. Ask them to put the animal in. If you hear the dog barking before you even walk in, go ahead and be like, "Hey, ma'am, sir, ma'am, can you go ahead and please put the dog in a different room, and we can check you. Or you can just kind of step outside." We animals act. They can be erratic. Some of it can be they were trained that way, or some of it can be they're just very protective of their owner. And then if all of a sudden their owner's sick or hurt, they kind of get that sense, and they will try to defend people touching their owner. Us putting things on, checking their not even us like wrestling around with them and just checking vitals can cause that animal to act irresponsibly. Snakes, don't never trust snakes. That bad. No, in all seriousness, but um, snakes, they're reptiles. Typically, reptiles tend to have less smaller brains, less things that they're more aware of, and they see many things either a threat and or prey. So I don't mess around with snakes. Not my game, bro. Get animal control there. Other crazy animals. If you ever run into a place where Siegfried and Roy tigers, things like that, be aware. We don't want to a tiger will kill they're just killing machines. You can shoot a tiger, and its legs are so strong it'll stay standing up afterwards. They are. That's literally what they do. Obviously, hopefully, we're not going tiger attacks. Although I've had one, and it was in Kingman, not anywhere fancy. I was supposed to go to one, but the weather wouldn't allow us to fly, and made me really sad. But because otherwise, how am I supposed to get a tiger attack in my life? But we do have, if I mean, even if you game covered when Tiger King came out, all of a sudden it made you aware that there's plenty of wild tiger, or not wild, tame tigers in different of these big cat sanctuaries or other. I mean, Vegas has all types of shows of all around, and so it's a danger that we need to definitely be aware of, and not just tigers. That's kind of side note. Just be aware of different types of animals that can be unseen and ones that we suspect or don't suspect. Or just animals, we typically won't win against most animals either. Sponsored traffic incident, either whether we're talking about just a traffic accident of some type, or if we're looking even more, some of the most dangerous ones I think we tend to can run on tend to be like slumpers on the wheel, whether they're just super tired, but we if anyone's ran them, I don't know if I've seen one who was just tired and that's why they were sleeping. They tend to be slumpers because they've been drinking all night and then they'll pass out at the wheel. Many times that'll like had happened again. A drive through quite a few times at an intersection of some type. They stop, all of a sudden, all that alcohol or whatever else kicks in. They slump over, and then when you wake them up, their first thought is typically to drive forward, and they all of a sudden will start driving. We have to be very cautious of this. If you wake up some people just out of the blue, they have a high tendency, or some people have a tendency to resort to violence right away, and that is a pretty big issue. So, or they will go, "Hey, I'm gonna hit the gas and try and get out of here." Whether instinctively or not, could just been like, "Oh yeah, I gotta go, gotta start driving forward," and they'll start just driving forward. So if you're trying to open the door or not, you have a chance to get ran over. That's why many times I've seen it. The fire department will throw the tire chocks underneath the tires, and many times I've seen them also place the rescue in front, and then so if they do try and drive, they're not going anywhere. They'll try before even trying to wake the patient. They'll make sure the keys are outside of the vehicle or outside of the ignition, and they will then attempt to wake the person up because if you just try and wake the person up, they'll try and flee many times. And it's not just to we're trying to wait for the cops to get there. If cops are there too, they'll park their cruisers many times there. Trying to get them in trouble though, what we're trying to do instead is make sure that we safety and that they don't just drive out into an intersection or wherever else or away really quickly. So all those there's in traffic scenes we know to be pretty unsafe if in the case of like a traffic accident itself. Reflective clothing. I know sometimes it seems ridiculous to have to wear these. There's sometimes I don't on the freeway. I almost always do, or any high rate of speed type road that we are on, just because we need to. I see they see flashing lights. They see something bright. People start turning towards that. Anywhere we're looking, that's where the vehicle's following. I've gone over this quite a lot. I'm good. I know we don't have public address systems in the private ambulance because people abuse them and yell at people as we drive. Probably a good thing, but we now use that tool. For approaching a vehicle in which passengers are just in rear view side mirror as you approach, retreat to safety. This is a sign of danger. Cops do that all the time. There's reason they have a whole method to their madness as they walk up behind a cop car behind. They start seeing certain things, people reaching for certain things, moving things. They're trying to get a good look on who's coming up behind them, and the person, whether it's a suspect or a patient, trying to see what's coming at them. If they're really that concerned, then they're also trying to judge so they can make a move of some type, whether that's pull a weapon or drive away, whatever else. So be aware of their open or unlatched trunks that may indicate people may be hidden or restrained in the compartment. Not sure. And if the trunk's slightly open, slam it shut without opening further. But at this point, like you got to be cautious and get Metro there. There's all types of weird ones you could think about, and just don't play around. Vehicles are a weapon, and we need to be highly aware of that. And if they try to do dumb things, we can get injured very easily. The paramedic who approaches the vehicle should do so from the passenger side of the vehicle. Observe the front seat post, B post, that post right behind there, and move forward only after ensured safety to do so. If we'll show this video in class. It's a pretty brutal video and loot cop screens a lot, but it's pretty decent. So for whatever reason, like I said, I don't think the videos really play in there. In these recordings, being said, violent street incidents. Yeah, Vegas has is decently violent. There's worse cities. There's better. Um, yep. Obviously, we know certain parts of the city are worse than others. But violent street incidents include voices that become louder, escalating tone, whether it's towards us or towards each other. Go to certain parts of town, and they are they have a higher propensity to pull weapons on you, or go to certain places. There's probably some places up in Mowapo, Logandale, Pahrump, where you show up and it's not going to be what we traditionally think of like gang violence, but no, they got weapons, and if you're approaching them and they don't know who you are, even if you are, even if they don't mean any harm towards first responders, they might not know what's going on, and they're just going, they might, they have a possibility of turning weapons towards you, and that's not a great day for anybody involved. Rapid increase in the size of the crowd, alcohol, inability of law enforcement to control the crowd. If law enforcement can't control the crowd, we stand zero chance. Let's leave. Fantastic picture of James Gannon, so Mike Gannon's little brother, with they're inside the ambulance, and you have the naked guy dancing on top of that ambulance, and they were just sitting inside. And so that is absolutely something to be highly aware of. If the scene gets crappy, try and lock yourself in the ambulance. People have a whole lot harder time getting out of there. And so this is that video that we'll go over the Chico, right? And it's not, that one was not excessively violent. It just had issues such as um, it was just because I was there. It was very interesting to see. It took very little for a bunch of drunk college age kids to start getting that group think and that crazy mindset and start ready just to cause a riot. And not like I said, it wasn't going after any one thing specifically. They were just drunk and wanting to then fight because everyone else was. So there it is. If you start seeing graffiti, if you're in the part of town that tends to have a lot of graffiti, and you start noticing it, and it symbolizes certain gains. So yes, we know certain parts of town are bad. If you are not familiar with, if you're in a new part of town, say for a mutual aid or something else, you're unsure of that. Um, Look for things like this that can kind of hint to you that this might not be the best neighborhood, and that, or that there can be gang type activity that can possibly be that. So yeah, or people that are in gangs, beware. Common gang activities: fighting, vandalism, robbery, weapon offensive, automobile theft, battery, human trafficking, alien smuggling, prostitution, drug dealing, and transport. Cool, we know that. Clandestine drug labs. Look at this picture here. It's quite no longer clandestine, because it's blowed up. But this looks like a very suburban neighborhood that this happens in. Obviously, most of you guys have probably seen Breaking Bad. If you haven't, fantastic show, go watch it. But uh, definitely shows where that there's always that chance neighbors can be doing it. I remember coming home from high school one time when I was living in Tennessee. After a football game, we looked around, saw all the cops everywhere. We're like, huh, whatever. However, the next morning we looked in the news, and like right down the road from us was the biggest meth lab in Tennessee in recent history was right there. So yeah, you never know who's living right down the road from you and working right down the road or doing whatever else. So just be aware of that. Just because it's a nicer part of town does not necessarily mean that there won't be other incidents. Both violence and the propensity for meth labs to want to explode violently. If drug labs is identified in EMS crew, you should leave scene at once, notify police, initiate incident command system, and hazmat procedures per protocol, blah, blah, blah. Yep. Get that? Domestic violence. Apparent fear of household members, different or conflicting accounts by parties on scene. One party preventing another from speaking. Patients reluctant to speak. Injuries that do not match the reported mechanism of injury. Unusual, unsanitary living conditions and personal hygiene. So pretty much everything on Boulder Highway. But in reality, if you start noticing something's not feeling right, go ahead and back out and get people there that know that can help diffuse the situation or at least make it safe. And if it's that bad, they should probably Metro might want to just be there just because to make there's probably an investigation or warrant there that they can go deal with. So get them there. Outside of motorcycle cops, most of the metro, their job around here is keeping people. It's dealing with a bunch of the craziness that we in our streets right now. So they're usually down for that, and they usually don't have a huge issue coming to help us, particularly if something just doesn't seem right. Many times our subconscious picks up on a ton of small things, and so if you get that gut feeling that something's not right, there's probably a reason it's not right, and your brain's picking up something that your prefrontal cortex necessarily isn't, and so it's subconsciously telling you, yo, let's go ahead and I don't like it, something's not feeling right, I'm getting out. And you should probably follow that. If it turns out to be nothing, it's nothing, but many times it turns out to be true. Let's see. Some different tactics to help ensure personal safety include avoidance, tactical retreat. Tactical retreat, throw that monitor at their face. Avoidance, never, or you start getting that tingly feeling, get out. Cover and concealment. Bigger difference here. And we'll go and cover and concealment in a sec. Distraction. Hey, here's this. Like, throw it at me like, this monitor's worth $10,000. Chuck it at their face, or hand it over, or throw it at them, and then book it out. Do whatever you can to drop it. One thing that we did when I taught defensive tactics for the hospital back in Arizona, one of the things that was there is like if someone holds you up and they want the wallet, whatever, go ahead and do that and then accidentally drop it. Pretend your hand's shaking. If your hand's not actually probably would be shaking, drop it. And so when they go down to bend, just run. Get you out. Whatever you can do to try and get away, distract them. Evasive, don't run in a straight line, zigzag. If anyone remembers Game of Thrones and Rakan, as he's running straight line across the battlefield and they shoot him, yeah, just zigzag, man. Moving a target laterally to you is a lot harder to track than moving in a straight line. So moving that back and forth erratically, not like every 3 steps left, then 3 more steps right, but move erratically all around and be surprised by how hard it is to hit you, particularly the further and further you get. Um, Covering concealment, or I guess we're going to go these more. Tactical retreat describes leaving scene danger observed and when indicators of violence are displayed. Retreating, don't be like, oh, you're a giant wuss, you retreated, you ran away. Like, nah, say that, I don't got the weapons to deal with this. Safety tactics, cover versus concealment. Cover is being really close, or not, sorry, not being really close, but being behind something that can stop a bullet or at least slow it down a ton. Concealment instead is like hiding behind a bush. Bullets will go through the bush, but it can help someone from seeing you. Concealment's okay, cover's better. You'd be surprised by what even a small little hump in the ground, if you can get behind, will help deflect bullets away from you. You don't typically want to be very close to that because the bullets will kind of follow it if it hits the edge of it and it'll kind of go around. But you don't want to be too standoffish because then it's easier for someone else to hit you. So try and put something big solid in between you. Remember, there's only about one part of your engine of your car that's really bulletproof, and that's your engine block. Up to like a certain caliber, like 50 cals, those start penetrating engine blocks. But even then, it's not. It's going to dissipate most energy before, and it probably won't penetrate the entire. It won't go through and through an engine block, but it'll hit an engine block. Other than that, the doors of your car, good luck. Yeah, that's while it will slow the bullet somewhat, it'll also cause additional fragmentation, and the bullet will still probably go through. And you'll be gunslose. If you start seeing assault rifles or anything different, well, assault rifles, the bullets themselves are not very big, and they tend to roll a lot. They are not some gigantic compared to like a hunting rifle, which has a big bullet going very fast. They're small. Assault rifle has smaller bullets, going really fast and shot rather fast. And so if you start seeing those, they have more penetration than a pistol does. Like pistol, and many of it can also depend on rounds. Just note that the cement is a great, or get behind some type of cover if you can, concealment if you can't, and then try and figure out what you need to do. If it's aimed at you, it's a lot harder to avoid things versus people shooting indiscriminately. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but if you are the target of the person rather than just a target, it's a little bit harder to solve because they're wanting to hit you specifically and not just shooting at anything that moves. Once you're there, if there people with a gun and that are shooting are trying, the eyes and everything and our body will start moving toward or looking towards movement. So if you're behind cover, and that's why concealment works, just chill out, try not to do anything until the danger is hopefully gone a little bit further, and then you can try and book it out further. And so this is that idea that stepping off can sometimes provide more cover than being right next to it. In the in this picture is an example of that. Yeah, if you have that safety vest on and the gunfight starts going off, I would go ahead and take that safety vest off. I'll take my chance against traffic now, because it makes you it's a big target identifier. Distraction, evasion tactics, and use self defense measures during retreat, and also use when they're not. Evasive tactics anticipate the moves of the aggressor and using unconventional pathways during retreat. Zigzag, guys, zigzag. Be crazy. Remember, hitting a lateral target, moving at a is harder. Moving at a rate that's not constant makes it harder to lead as well. A little bit of slow, a little bit of fast, a little bit of right, a little bit of left, a little bit further running directly away while at an angle, then switching and making a hard 90-degree. You do everything to be erratic and cause a harder target, but don't move your body erratically in the sense of like flying your arms everywhere. No, keep everything tight, concealed, so you have less opportunity if bullets are coming towards you to do that. Paramedic crews trained in tactical EMS will often use pre-assigned roles for distracting or evasive maneuvers. So we're going to talk a little bit about body armor. The term for tactical patient care describes patient care activities that occur inside the same perimeter where there's a direct or indirect threat. An area where direct threat is known as a hot zone, indirect threat more of a warm zone. Tactical medics provide immediate medical care to injured during SWAT operation. These medics treat this injured on site, or at least usually stabilize them and move them out. Their primary job is for PD. The next is they will treat the patient if PD is not shot or their suspect, but primary is PD. Metro is very good at one shooting the targets that they're aiming at, but then following up and immediately providing care for the patients or the suspects that they just shot. Metro's fantastic at that. We've watched a video, I believe, in there previously of them doing that. Body armor. This is actually body armor I had over in Afghanistan. That was our ready room. Glock 19, helmets, gears, and the giant target indicator that says medic with two giant bright red crosses. But we also need to be identified in this case that we are the medic because in the case of mortars or whatever else hitting us, many times we were dealing on the embassy with civilians, and so we had to have the ability for them to be recognized that we were medics and providing medical treatment, things like that. Some agencies use personnel who are cross-trained in law enforcement and tactical EMS. In Flagstaff area out in Arizona, there was a couple firefighter paramedics that were trained and as part of the SWAT team to provide just medicine. You can see this all the way up to doctors. They do that in Tucson, Arizona. They have a doctor with them, but they also have SWAT like paramedics as well. Most places around here use SWAT medics on their team, and when they're not doing SWAT things, they're usually doing search and rescue things, and so they kind of are used as a dual role. North Las Vegas, last I heard, but this was years ago, did not use they used medics, but they didn't have medics for them. Metro has their own internal medics, but Northtown didn't, so they contracted with, I believe, ATF or TEA, and had one of their SWAT medic, the ATF TEA federal medic that was a SWAT qualified, and they contract with them to come in on their SWAT raids. When wearing body armor, like body armor is great, but it's not fantastic. You look up there, like the plates are the most important things. Yes, some of that rest is Kevlar, but soft armor is, particularly when you're dealing with higher powered rifle rounds, doesn't do very much comparative to the plates. Plates are great, and if you get up to like level 4 plates, they can my level 4 plates at home stop up to 5 to 6 30-06 rounds, which is a big, very fast round, and it can stop quite a few of them. And the plates just go directly over your vital organs, your heart, lungs, and your kind of your liver, spleenish area. But that's it. Getting hit in the head, those helmets work relatively decently, but getting hit in the face, good luck. Doesn't help there. Fantastic target indicator. Don't shoot pair. It's kind of a bit funny. But most tactical medics and EMTs are trained in the following: team health and management, care under fire, officer rescue, medical operations, pre-planning, medical intelligence, responding to the active shooter, medical gear for tactical operations. There's a few things out there, but in reality, you'll see most overseas tech medics, they don't really do. They either super gladic, or if they need to, they'll crank. and they kind of leave it at that. There's no time to tube. That's a big procedure. Now they're gonna supraglottic you, crike you, or BLS airway you at best. You do not do care on the what we call the X. If you're getting shot at, that's not where to do care. If many times if there are tourniquets on, and that's it. But that's usually that's not even done on the X. They'll do, and sometimes depending if there's only one medic and how austere the environment and gunfight is, someone else will drag the person to the medic because if the medic hits, now they have not a whole lot. Although most people overseas and SWAT as well, I'm willing to bet, has a lot of medical training itself, and so they will, if the medic goes down, they still know how to do tourniquets, things like that. And then you have very high tier people like the CAG, which is Delta Force, whatever. Um, CAG was the last one her Combat Applications Group is what they're called. But they tend to change their names and they get when a certain name becomes too synonymous with that group of individuals. It used to be Delta Force back in the day. Now it's CAG or whatever else there are. DevGru, which is SEAL Team 6. A few of the others, when they go in to do a raid in urban combat, because urban combat has such a high potential and high propensity for people to get shot, even no matter how good you're trained on, they wear tourniquets around each of their limbs, just not tight yet. And so if they go down, they just have to tighten it real quick and pull it versus trying to put it on. That's a very austere, hostile environment they're going into. But team healthcare, health and management, just making sure things I would do always with my team, one ongoing training, making sure they're all up to speed on things that I make sure they're aware of my bigger bag that I carried and what equipment was in there and what. So if I went down, they could come help me. Care under fire. That care under fire is very minimal, guys. It's like the big thing with overseas in particular and SWAT medics generally, though not all, some SWAT medics, particularly like when the docs get assigned, are not necessarily armed, or they are armed with a pistol just in case for self-defense. They are not there as part of the stack going in as shooters. They're there to immediately apply care. But care under fire, most of the time, the first thing in TCCC that they teach you is shoot back. Once the enemy's eliminated, it's a whole lot easier to provide care to your patient without getting shot. So care under fire, officer rescue, some SWAT things, medical operations, flu planning, medical intelligence. Just some of it's, hey, we're going to this area. Here's the nearest hospital. Here's the nearest this. Some of it is when you're going into a different area, you might be, hey, I know the local agencies here. Particularly if it's kind of local, we're going to go ahead and reach out to whatever ambulance service, make sure that they're aware that we're operating, and that's where many of us get put on SWAT standby, things like that. Medical operations pre-planning, just here, if we get shot here, you do a bunch of extra things. New Year's Eve, things like that. They're doing a lot of different pre-planning in the case of mass casualties, things like that. Responding to the active shooter, going in, doing that. Special medical gear. There's some out there, and it depends on what you're trying to do and in what environment. Different missions require different medical gear sets besides just the other tactical gear sets. If you're going on a special operations team for like the Green Berets, where they go out there and train foreign people to fight against their country, foreign freedom fighters, if we will, they'll be out there by themselves, a team of 4, 12, or usually max out at 12, and the medic can do all types of crazy things up to including like small surgery, like debridement of injuries. Go in, they'll do cut downs to get certain lines. They're very advanced practitioners in there, and they have a whole unique skill set and tools to use. Other medics, if you're going in for direct action, aka like Osama bin Laden raid or wherever else where you're going in after a certain target in a known situation, you don't have very much medical gear because all that gear starts getting heavy and you have to move fast and it makes you a big target. So you're going to go in with a smaller bag, smaller gear. All you need to do typically is throw tourniquets on, decompress, and get out, and combat guys, things like that, because you don't want to stay on scene too long. So a couple more pictures from Afghanistan. This ambulance was actually pretty cool. Over to our left, because they had to navigate through some of the embassy's narrower alleyways and things like that. They used this. It had a full striker, a Zoll in the back. It was set up like a miniature ambulance, and it had about as much room, slightly less room than some of the ambulances you guys roll in. It actually looked pretty good. That was not my ambulance. I did not have that. My ambulance was over to the right, which is a Bearcat, and we were there for tactical response. The one on the left, they did not have really any tactics. They weren't armed. They were there they were running medical calls on the embassy because the embassy had several 1,000 people, and they would run medical calls. They would be there to help us out if a big incident came out. I was part of the security team for the embassy in Kabul. What we would do instead, we were standing outside in there, and there's multiple Bearcats all around. They had other people as guards, and then we were the emergency reaction team, either in the instance that the embassy was attacked, things like that. What we would do is plug the hole with whatever vehicles. The ambulance, not so much, because we didn't have an up gun on there, so there's no big gun up top. Our goal in there was not to fight. It's a pretty heavily armored vehicle, and it can take quite a few different types of rounds, and to include some RPGs, things like that. RPG, rocket propelled grenade. And so what we do, our goal was to get there, get out. It had 3 stretchers in the back. It had 2 small stretchers that were stacked on top of each other. And by stretchers, I'm not talking about gurneys that would carry, but those green ones that have handles on either side, and they could carry them up. We could stack 2 up there, and then 1 on the other side for more critical care, more things that we needed to do. And so if a person went down, a mortar dropped, and we had a mass cas situation, we were there to show up, and the other people were there to be there to support us. But as a medic, we would be running the mass casualty scene. Even though we had our shift leads or team leads that were running some of the security aspects of it, the medics would then take over this crazy mass cas scene, almost like a medical group commander. And it was a pretty unique experience. And they were not compared to what we're seeing currently in Ukraine, but they were using drones to try and drop bombs and things on us. The drones at the time were not nearly as sophisticated as they are now, because that was approximately 7 years ago, and drone warfare has gone crazy here since. But they try and fly drones over the embassy and drop mortars and things on us, besides just normal mortars or bombs and trying to blow us up. So, most tactical medics are trained in the following: personal protective gear, like I guess you can be trained in gear things. Special needs for extended operations. Like talking about the special forces guys. Preventive medicine. You're there out with your guys. There might come up with some things that you need to do more preventive type care for, not just emergent. You just got shot care. And then also some rudimentary knowledge and experience dealing with weapons of mass destruction and toxic hazards. All right. Now for the crime scene part, what we're going to kind of talk about here is crime scene is a location where a criminal act has occurred. So like 3/4 of the scenes we respond to in one way or fashion. If someone's been particularly shot, or it looks like a crazy violent scene, whether it's shot, stabbed, or something else, we have to be very semi-cautious. The paramedics' observations at a crime scene are important. Your documentation here is big. You're probably there's a high chance that they will subpoena you, if for nothing else than your chart, but many times of what you saw on scene. So you need to be detailed in what you see, but don't make assumptions on anything you see. Just detail the facts of what you see within a scene and what was said on a scene. If you don't remember, don't put it down. And if they ask you, just go, I don't recall at the time. I remember seeing something similar to this. Patient care is ultimate priority, even at a crime scene. And so good instance of this, seen this a few times. One quick example was showing up a scene as east part of town. Apparently they heard a gunshot. Police went there. They had, when they got there, it's like one of those steel screened doors. Apparently some lady was in there. They shot through the screen door, but not the main door was open. So I don't know exactly how it all went down, but basically got shot one time. We could see the hole through the screen door. But because it was a pretty active scene, and the cops said they didn't detect her breathing from where we were at. They called us, and so I think me and the fire medic, we went inside. We did a quick check. She was down. She'd been down for a decent-ish amount of time. We know and not even like necessarily long enough for rigor to kick in or anything like that. So under an hour, but she'd been in there at least 20 minutes or so. 0 pulse. We know patients with 0 that have a traumatic injury with no pulse and their coding. If you are unsure, you can always check your EKG. I think that's what we did, asystole, and we just called it. Tried not to disturb the patient or the scene very much at all. Minimized our footprint in there, and then got out. If that patient is viable, you work the patient. Do be aware of how jacked up we can mess up the crime scenes for their investigations. But I'd much rather have them be investigating an aggravated assault versus a murder. So if we have a chance to save the patient, we do it. But if there's no reason to run a trauma code because that person's been dead, have your one or two you can have a medic from each agency or just one medic. I don't always need to see some of these horrible, horrific scenes in there. The other medic's already like, yeah, it's pretty jacked up. You don't necessarily need to. If you can both go in, it doesn't hurt to have two people to go in and check together. But also, you don't need to have always two people. Don't send the whole engine crew, rescue, and private ambulance all in there to destroy the crime scene as part of that. But we're here to save lives if it's attainable. All right, that's it for the technical medicine part. Rather short lesson this week. And we're going to go over some tech med stuff real quick as far as job stuff and things you guys can look at. Job requirements one may different. There's a ton of variance in the different types of tactical jobs. And in fact, one tactical job or one job that's somewhat considered tactical, even though it's not fully like guns or anything like that, is wilderness medicine. I know it sounds kind of out there, but they're both in austere environments where you're working and you have limited resource. So they're very similar, even though they're technically a little bit different. They're a little bit similar. They're actually considered like austere medics, and so they kind of have a similar job and they do similar things. One just tends to not get shot at as much. But the big difference is acting in a domestic or an international capacity. Most domestic tactical paramedics are police or federal agencies. There's obviously some other variances to that. Some of them, like I said, you can have some that are from the fire department that are attached out and they're trained to go in. I know locally, most of the fire units here are meant to do the rescue task force, MAGTAF, I think is what they call it. You keep saying it keeps reminding me of the base I was at, but where they go in the warm zone after an active shooter. So the shooter might still be alive, or it might be an unknown. There's police in front clearing the area, and they are following shortly, and they have body armor, helmets, and they're just doing immediate care, throwing tourniquets on, things like that, and then moving on. International medics typically more combat military type. Technically, that's really actually easier to get into. A little bit harder life, but kind of cool too. And go over how you get in some of these. Typically work for like a police tactical medic, like I was saying a little bit earlier. They can work in search and rescue and or SWAT. Many times it's both. If they're not doing SWAT stuff, they're doing search and rescue stuff. They're in the helicopters or they're doing whatever else. And then if there's a SWAT call up, they'll go there. Some places have SWAT missions all the time, but still they're not always on the active team. So if they're not on an active team, they'll be doing some of the other things that we talked about, or they might be doing search and rescue. Typically, to get into those type of positions, you need 3 to 5 years at a police department as a patrol officer before you can try for the SWAT team. However, sometimes being that medic allows you. There's search and rescue for a couple different departments that will also supply for state police departments. Two big ones are Arizona Department of Public Safety, so or NHP, and they have a very nationwide renowned rescue team. They do a lot of cliff rescues, a lot of short haul rescues. They got a hoist on one of their helicopters. There's a video I have somewhere of he's in the news, but where the police helicopter was a guy was base jumping off a cliff. Wind blew him back into it. He's hanging off there, and they short haul. They go down. They hook him up off from the bottom of the helicopter, so they're hanging down there, and they pick him up and move him to safety. They do some really cool things like that. The other one is Maryland State Police. They have some really cool helicopters and big helicopters that do some stuff. They also work a lot with Department of Homeland Security because it's all around Washington, D.C. area. So they have a big federal help as well. And they do a lot of really cool things. And both of those you can get hired on as a paramedic police officer and move immediately to the search and rescues. And at those same times you can help you're in a peer rescue. You're not doing CCT type care. This is a rescue type paramedic. And then many times because you're that, you're also qualified to work with the state police SWAT team as well. So those are some cool ones. We can get into it quicker in 3 to 5 years. And there's also some other ones like security medic, which we can see in various capacities, executive protection ones, which you look at the SANS and some other things where they hire them locally. Gavin DeBecker out in California, they protect a lot of the Hollywood elite people and other famous and or just rich people that need or want protection. And so there's always usually a medic or two on the team at all times, and so they usually need 3 to 4 medics. There's almost always an opening for that SANS executive position over the last couple of years. One thing about dealing with some of the very rich people doing executive protection, basically bodyguarding, is that you, particularly for people that the guarding that they tend to travel a lot, and the sands when I was looking at it when I came out here to do that as a part time or something on the side. Um, you're doing things on like going out to Europe a lot there, but you're not going to go drink or anything fun. You're sitting there. You might be on a yacht, but you're looking out. You're watching people. You're making sure. A lot of that is the chance that someone's actually going to cause harm to most of the people in executive protection is actually relatively low. But the issue that comes up, of course, um, you're doing a lot of preventive or bellyache care, things like that, and so carrying a bottle of Tylenol is big. Executive protection is kind of what I did on the military and high threat side, protecting diplomats, and I definitely had stomach medications, Tylenol, other things besides my emergent care, as well as things like epinephrine. So I'll kind of get into that a little bit. So the military itself, obviously, they have their entire combat medic program, and all you have to do is sign up for that. Going into it, particularly if you guys are already going to have your medics, if you're interested, it's pretty easy and you can go get into cool jobs relatively quickly. And you usually get to skip out on some of the training because you already have a high level certification. So, and you get in with a higher rank if you went in right now. And after you get out of the military with that experience, and sometimes you can get out of the military if you already have combat experience and you now get your paramedic, like I did, because I was just standard infantry in the Marines. You now can, but you're still qualified because you have both the tactical and the paramedic experience, and so it kind of combines. And so you can work as a contractor overseas, and that's what I was doing as a medic on a diplomatic security team and a medic on the emergency reaction team for a couple embassies in high threat areas like Baghdad and Kabul in times when they were not the most friendly towards us, still not. And depending, and so like one of the things as an executive protection, but in a high threat environment, yeah, I had a few things. I had a small little go bag. I had my bigger bag would usually stay in the vehicle, and I kept a few tourniquets, extra ammo, uh, things like epinephrine. So if we go to these meetings, I'm usually the closest one to, as the rest of the security team kind of makes a big old cordon or goes to different areas to do that. I'm usually on the innermost circle, if not in the exact room with the person. I'm right outside the door if I'm not in the room with them. And I mean, they're trying new foods or maybe different foods. They can have anywhere from gastrointestinal issues to anaphylactic reaction. And I had an auto injector because I don't need to be worried about drawing up a vial of. I did have a drug bag and narcs and all that with meds on me as well. But auto injector's real quick to run in there, hit them on the side, hit them in the thigh real quick, and get that life-saving epi on them on board quickly versus trying to start an IV or trying to draw up meds real quick. And so that's something you can do relatively quickly. To having had a SAM splint in there, I think at one time, but I don't know if I did, and then a bunch of tourniquets. So a bunch of different things that you could work. Tactical has a wide variety, but it's still a little bit difficult sometimes to get into. Obviously, these are all my patches from one. That's all Kabul patches. There is an advanced certification, tactical paramedic certification by the IBSE, same people who do the CCPC, the critical care paramedic, and the FPC, the flight paramedic certification. It's not that hard a test, but it's still way harder than it should be because it's IBSC and they are a pain in the butt. They also recommend TCCC and TECC. TCCC is oriented more towards combat medic roles in a combat zone. TECC is more oriented towards police, civil, domestic situations, things like that where you're dealing. And it has a lot more things about search and seizure. However, technical paramedic cert, the TPC, pulls a lot from both of those, and it's not oriented towards one or the other necessarily. It'll have questions about the Fourth and Fifth, or Fourth Amendment in particular, but search and seizure, things like that, and then what to do when you're in a combat zone. So it's a little bit of everything for the technical paramedic test. Still not that hard to take. It's not easy because it's an IBSC test, but it's easier than the CCPC and the FPC. Tech medic pay all over the place, varies by region, specialty, and who you work for. Average medic SWAT medic is anywhere from 35 to 85,000, depending who you're working for where. Executive protection medic 50 to 130,000. The SANS, I believe, was right around 85 to 90,000 for theirs. Relatively, and it's all salaried, so every week you're getting the same pay. And many times you're sitting in an office doing paperwork, and some other times you're out guarding them doing things. The medic usually is not the first one to surrounding them. You don't really need any advanced certification. I know a number of people who have done that job. Not many of them liked it very much because it's kind of a boring job, but the overseas contractor medic pay a little bit interesting. These prices are all over the place, and sometimes you can also do just non-TAC medic stuff contracting. Sergio, one of the guy, he's instructed here occasionally, not in any recent class, but he's over in Iraq right now working, but not as a tactical medic. He's at one of the clinics, and he's running one of the clinics there at at BIAP, which is Baghdad International Airport, and they have a few surgical suites there. So it's not like a clinic like working with the local indigenous population, but instead, usually if one of the people at the embassy is having a heart attack, needs surgery, gets shot, whatever else, they fly them there, and I think they're like 4 to 8 surgical suites there, and it's a trauma center. They'll stabilize the patient and then fly them from there, usually to Germany for further on. But usually those higher pay ranges tend to come with higher experience levels. There's some in there. My last one in Kabul, Afghanistan, I was making around 225. If I would have stayed the full year, 225,000 a year, and not that was all non-tax at that point. But the highest when you usually get above that range is those needing special forces medical background. So you usually need to be an 18 Delta, a Navy, whether for the SEALs or for Marine Recon, because Marines use Navy corpsmen as theirs. So there's special duty, special forces type medics there. They want that higher level there to be able to. But if you have some of that experience, sometimes it's not that hard if you have even just basic infantry experience. And once you get in, you just need a security clearance too to help you get it. And then I still get emails monthly about them asking if I want to go work back in Baghdad, Yemen, other places. Luckily, I did not do a flight job out of Yemen because that obviously went a little bit south recently. So, there we go. All right, any questions? This is me. It's all kind of blurry right here. I don't know why this picture didn't show up well. And I'm right there, bottom middle, taking a knee, and that's at the Baghdad embassy, and the Tiger River is right between us and that building in the far back. So those are a little bit smaller Bearcats, but they're still decent. That was back in 2012. Cool. Have a great day, guys. Have a great week. If you have any questions, go ahead and ask.